What if I told you that the world's most powerful empire was nearly brought to its knees? Not by war, not by plague, but by its own toilet. In the sweltering summer of 1858, London didn't just stink, it suffocated. The River Thames, once a source of pride and commerce, had turned into a ribbon of rot, so foul that lawmakers fled Parliament. Curtains were soaked in chemicals to mask the smell, and citizens genuinely feared the air might kill them. But here's the twist. While London's elite held their noses and panicked, a secret world beneath the cobblestones was thriving. In that reeking underworld, treasure hunters, scavengers, and sewage workers found their fortunes amid the filth. This is not just a story of sewage. It's a story of survival, of innovation, and of the weirdest jobs in Victorian England. Today, we talk about the great stink of London and the unlikely heroes who made a living from the waste that nearly destroyed an empire. The year is 1858. London, the beating heart of a vast empire, a city of burgeoning industry and unparalleled influence, found itself in the grip of an invisible enemy, its own waste. The mighty River Thames, the lifeblood of the city, had become a fetid, open sewer. For centuries, as London grew from a modest settlement to a sprawling metropolis, the river had served as the primary receptacle for human and industrial discharge. Cesspools overflowed into its waters, slaughterhouse refuse mingled with household waste, and the relentless tide carried it all downstream, or, during low tide and hot weather, left it festering on the banks. The Industrial Revolution exacerbated this crisis exponentially. London's population exploded, but its infrastructure lagged far behind. Flush toilets, increasingly common in wealthier homes, simply redirected vast quantities of raw sewage into drains that ultimately emptied into the Thames. The antiquated sewer system, designed for rainwater runoff, was utterly overwhelmed. The result was a river thick with excrement, a putrid broth that defied description. By the summer of 1858, the situation reached a critical point. Weeks of scorching weather baked the accumulated filth, releasing a stench so overpowering, so all-encompassing, that it became known as the Great Stink. The air hung heavy and yellow with the miasma of decay. It seeped into homes, clung to clothing, and assaulted the senses with relentless intensity. Diarists of the time recorded their horror, describing the smell as a suffocating blend of rotting meat, stagnant sewage, and something altogether indescribably foul. The consequences were immediate and widespread. Businesses suffered as customers stayed away. Social gatherings became unbearable. Even the Houses of Parliament, located right on the riverbank, were forced to suspend sittings. Curtains, soaked in chloride of lime, were hung in a desperate attempt to block the odor, but to little avail. Members of Parliament spoke of the real possibility of moving the government away from the city altogether. The Great Stink was not merely an unpleasant inconvenience. It was a public health crisis and a threat to the very functioning of the nation's capital. People genuinely feared for their health, and the miasma was widely believed to carry disease, a fear not entirely unfounded given the cholera epidemics that had ravaged the city in previous decades. The Great Stink served as a stark and unavoidable reminder of the appalling sanitary conditions that underpinned the grandeur of Victorian London. To understand the Great Stink, we must delve into the historical context and the prevailing attitudes towards sanitation in 19th century London. For centuries, the Thames had been seen as a natural and convenient way to dispose of waste. Out of sight, out of mind. As the city grew, this laissez-faire approach became disastrous, but change was slow to come. Several factors contributed to the escalating crisis. Firstly, rapid urbanization without corresponding investment in infrastructure. London's population boomed from around 1 million at the start of the 19th century to over 3 million by the mid-century. The existing infrastructure, largely based on medieval designs, simply could not cope with this unprecedented growth. Secondly, the introduction of the flush toilet, while a step forward for individual hygiene, inadvertently worsened the problem of river pollution. Without a modern sewage treatment system, these toilets merely channeled vast quantities of human waste directly into the drains and ultimately the Thames. Thirdly, the prevailing scientific understanding of disease transmission played a role. While the link between contaminated water and diseases like cholera was beginning to be understood by some, the dominant theory, known as miasma theory, held that diseases were spread by foul-smelling air. This focus on the smell, rather than the actual pollutants in the water, may have delayed effective solutions aimed at cleaning the river itself. Finally, bureaucratic inertia and a lack of coordinated action hampered progress. Various authorities were responsible for different aspects of sanitation, leading to a fragmented and inefficient system. Funding for large-scale infrastructure projects was often difficult to secure, and competing interests further complicated matters. It took the sheer unbearable horror of the Great Stink to finally galvanize action and force the government to confront the dire state of London's sanitation. The visual and olfactory assault of the polluted Thames could no longer be ignored, and the threat of the capital becoming uninhabitable provided the necessary impetus for radical change. While the affluent citizens of London recoiled from the stench of the Thames, a different world existed in the darkness beneath the city's streets, the world of the dirty jobs that kept the city functioning, however grimly. These were the individuals who dealt with London's waste, not as a nuisance, but as a source of livelihood. Toshers, the sewer scavengers. These were the intrepid individuals, often among the poorest in society, who ventured into the labyrinthine sewers at low tide. Armed with little more than a lamp and a pole, they would wade through the sludge, searching for anything of value that had been lost. Coins, jewelry, buttons, and scrap metal were all fair game. Life as a Tosher was perilous, with constant risks of disease, drowning, and explosions of methane gas. Night soil men, the cesspit cleaners. Before the modern sewer system, London's sanitation depended on cesspits, large holes beneath homes where waste was collected. The night soil men worked under the cover of darkness to empty these pits. Using buckets and poles, they would scoop out the waste, known as night soil, and load it onto carts to be sold as fertilizer. The job was not only disgusting, but also extremely dangerous, with risks of disease and fatal accidents. Mudlarks, the riverbank scavengers. While Toshers were in the sewers, Mudlarks searched the exposed riverbanks of the Thames at low tide. Often children, they would wade through the mud, looking for anything they could sell, from lost coins and buttons to pieces of pottery and scrap metal. Mudlarking was a difficult and unrewarding existence, with ever-present health risks from the polluted water. Treasure. Amidst the turd, what they found. The notion of finding treasure in a river of sewage might seem absurd, but for these workers, even small discoveries could make a significant difference. Lost coins were a common find, especially copper pennies and silver shillings that might have slipped from pockets. More valuable finds, like jewelry, silverware, and buckles made of precious metals, were less frequent but highly prized. Beyond monetary value, these scavengers also found items that offered a glimpse into the lives of Victorian Londoners. Clay pipes, discarded toys, old bottles, and personal items offered fragments of stories from the city above. These objects, while not directly valuable, provide a tangible link to the past and offer historians insights into the everyday lives of people from all social classes. The existence of these dirty jobs highlights the stark contrast of the era, where immense wealth coexisted with extreme poverty, and where even the most disgusting corners of the city could offer a glimmer of hope for those with nothing else to lose. The Great Stink laid bare the deep-seated class divide of Victorian society. For the wealthy, the stench was an invasion of their comfort and a threat to their health, a problem to be solved with political action and public works. They had the means to leave the city for the summer, or to mitigate the odor with strong chemicals and closed windows. Their disgust was a temporary, if profound, inconvenience. However, for the men, women, and children who performed the city's dirty jobs, the Great Stink was not an anomaly, but an escalation of their daily reality. For them, the foulness was their livelihood. The very pollution that drove the rich from their homes was the source of a few pennies for the Toshers and Mudlarks. Their lives were already steeped in the squalor that the upper classes had only just begun to notice, highlighting a powerful truth. London's problems only became urgent when they became inescapable for everyone, not just the impoverished. The grossness of London wasn't confined to the Thames. The streets themselves were a pungent mix of filth. The city's immense population of horse-drawn carriages meant that thousands of tons of horse manure were deposited on the streets daily. This, along with household refuse and overflow from inadequate drains, created a pervasive layer of grime. The air was thick, not only with the stench from the river, but also with smog, rotting food, and general decay. The Great Stink of 1858, while a period of immense discomfort, proved to be a catalyst for change. The horror of the situation forced Parliament to act decisively, passing the Metropolitan Board of Works, further powers, an amendment. Act 1858. The task of building a modern sewer system was given to the brilliant engineer Joseph Bazalgette. His ambitious plan involved the construction of over 82 miles of massive intercepting sewers that would collect the city's waste and divert it away from the Thames to treatment works downriver. Bazalgette's sewer system was a monumental achievement of Victorian engineering. The construction took decades, but the result was a dramatic improvement in the water quality of the Thames and a significant reduction in the incidence of waterborne diseases. The Great Stink and the subsequent construction of the modern sewer system marked a turning point in London's history, demonstrating the importance of public health infrastructure. As for the Toshers, Mudlarks, and night soil men, the new, more efficient sewer system gradually made their way of life obsolete. The story of the Great Stink and the people who lived and worked within its filth serves as a powerful reminder of a time when one of the world's greatest cities was brought to its knees by its own waste. It is a tale of squalor and ingenuity, of a river choked with filth and the hidden world of those who sought treasure within it. It underscores the resilience of those who lived in the shadows of Victorian London and the transformative power of necessity. The next time you stand on the banks of the Thames, remember the era when its waters ran thick with waste, and when the air itself was heavy with the unbearable stench of a city struggling to cope with its own success. This is long history short. your shortcut to the whole story. We want to continue to bring stories that are worth the listen and help not only educate, but entertain a bit too. If you have any suggestions for stories you'd like to hear, we would love to know. Leave a comment, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe.